Hello, guys. It's David here from the Blue Moon podcast. Just to talk you through City's last season and hopes for next season. Last season, I mean, it's impossible to say that it was a bad season by any stretch of the imagination. You know, they won the treble, and I think for large spells of the season, that was beyond what many of us were expecting. For large spells, City were. I mean, they weren't bad, but they weren't great. It looked like Arsenal's Premier League title to lose, certainly for long spells up until kind of City put a run together from the end of March onwards or so. The first half of the season, City were good but not great. So there were one or two strange warning signs here and there. They were playing well, but struggling to score at times. And there were some games where it just looked like it was a little bit of a slog. There were other games where they took teams apart, because in the first half of the season, for instance, they beat United 6-3. And that really had no business being 6-3. City were miles better ahead on the day. So there was this kind of weird transformation around March time. Up until then, they'd not won more than 3 in a row in the Premier League all season. They would put a few results together and then they'd drop points stupidly in a bit of a daft draw, or they'd get beaten in kind of a game where, in fairness, they deserved to get beaten. I'm thinking kind of like Brentford at home or Spurs away, for instance. And then kind of around about the end of March time, the penny just dropped and City just went on this winning run. Guardiola tried a few things throughout the course of the season. So obviously, with having Haaland up top, the headline was that Haaland was scoring lots and lots of goals, and he was. But City didn't have the control that they'd had in previous seasons with the false nine. And a lot of this season was Guardiola trying to work out how to get that control back. And that's effectively what he did at the end of the season with, I mean, it became a bit of a trope that John Stones would move into midfield. But there were plenty of players that had tried it up until that point. He tried playing Bernardo Silva at left back and having him move into a box midfield to maintain the control. That didn't really work. Joao Cancelo obviously left at the end of January and moved away on loan. But up until then, he'd been one that they were trying to kind of work into a position further up the pitch. And in the end, when they found the solution with Stones, it worked really, really well. And I mean, none better than, for instance, the Real Madrid home game, where City just absolutely took one of the best European teams apart. And that kind of summarised the end of the season. That's how City went on to do so well at the end of the season, because they found this tactic that allowed them to have the control they needed and also let Haaland get into positions where he'd score. So obviously the key to the Premier League season was, in as much as City putting a run of results together, it was Arsenal dropping points. Arsenal drawing with West Ham and Southampton in particular. You know, you can't do that ahead of a game at City, having already lost once to City. And having dropped points at Anfield ahead of that as well. So when City won that one at the Etihad, it really felt like a massive turning point in the course of the season. And City just never looked back. They used that momentum to go on and claim the title. The FA Cup run was good, and beating United in the final was really, really nice for someone who grew up in a city, Manchester, in the 90s. So I mean, and to score within 15 seconds of the start of the game, that was an incredible start for just taking your seat at Wembley and then seeing Gundogan smash it in. And then the Champions League final, City were by no means the better team on the night for the Champions League final, but they got the job done in a manner that they haven't done previously. You know, they didn't deserve to win against Chelsea a few years ago, and you know, Chelsea took the chance that they needed. City probably didn't really deserve to win against Inter this year, but they took their chance when it came, and that's the crucial thing. And then Edison was superb towards the end to keep Inter out a couple of times, and then there was the unfortunate Lukaku block from the Inter point of view. So it felt like a real kind of... It was an exhilarating moment when the final whistle went, because it felt like City had completed everything I'd ever wanted to see from them. I'm lucky in that I've now seen City at their lowest ever point in '99, and I was a season ticket holder for that. And I've seen City at their highest ever point. I was a season ticket holder last season when they won everything apart from the League Cup. And I don't buy the argument that Nathan Jones stopped a quadruple, by the way, because I think if City had beaten Southampton in the League Cup, it might put a bit more pressure on some of the other ties around a two-legged semi-final with United. So yeah, it was a brilliant season, and that leads us to expectations to next season. It's impossible to top. You can't do better than City did last season. So what I'd like to see is I want to see a more complete season in the sense of performances, purely because like I say, the first 6 months of the season weren't particularly brilliant. I mean, up until the World Cup, and then after that, there was the real dip after the World Cup, and then they found the form towards the end. I'd like a consistent season this time around, and see how that can benefit a league title push. I'd like them to win the league title again. Nobody's ever won it 4 times in a row. I'd like City to have that honour. I'd like Guardiola to have that honour as well, because if he doesn't do that this year, he's probably never going to do it, because he's probably not staying around for another 4 years after this season coming. So it'd be nice to see him get that accolade. And then beyond that, I just want to see some entertaining football again. It's a privilege to be able to say that about Manchester City these days. That you go into a season not really sure of what you can win and what really sure of what you should be winning. It sounds arrogant to say, and I understand how that sounds. But, City have hit a point where, you can't really grumble with anything that you are delivered, because there's probably more success around the corner. So that's what I'd like to see. Competitive football, entertaining football, and a Premier League title challenge.
Man City on another level, and Arsenal are very, very close to them, I think. Not in terms of strength in depth, but their starting 11 is excellent. I think Arsenal are going to run them very, very close next year.